Oh. There we are. Beginning it up. Cut tape.
All right.
Production.
Let's do a little prayer first. Lord, we just thank you for today, and we thank you that you're merciful and gracious to us because you sent your son because we really don't deserve it. But with you, there's hope and there's faith and there's trust that we can continue on and one day be in heaven with you and have everlasting life. And I just pray that we do a good lesson and get something out of it tonight. And I pray it in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, you know, when I started reading this, it's funny because I'm not even sure what made me pick this solid ground one. Although I was reading in here a little bit, going through it briefly the first night, and I saw there was mentioned something about Vietnam in there. And our one friend was in Vietnam, and I talked to him a lot about it. And that kind of got me interested, and I said, well, this is probably as good as the next, so I said, I'll do this one. But once I started reading it, I'm thinking, this is like the chapter in the book right here. I struck jackpot when I got this one because I just thought, you know, it's funny, and on page 61, it starts off, the law of solid ground, trust is the foundation of leadership. And the first sentence, how important is trust for a leader? It is the most important thing. And then it goes on and talks about trust. And to me, that's so apparent, so true. And then trust is the foundation, the leadership, the law of solid ground. So I just want to ask you guys, what are some synonyms? Everybody know what a synonym is back
Something
in
that sounds like another word?
Or it's the same thing. So what would you say a synonym of trust would be? I mean, you can just blurt them out, whatever you might think.
Faith and belief. Like in Greek, it's all like the same word. Faith,
Yeah.
trust, and belief. Or they're similar in the root word anyways.
Yeah.
So,
You know, when I started doing this, I mean, there's a number of synonyms for trust. And then once you get off thinking about it, gosh, you can just start thinking about all kinds of things that relates to trust. So, any other ones you think of off the bat for trust? Not really. Okay.
what were some of the ones that you came up
Well, let me move on then. We'll kind of come back to it.
with? What?
But
I wanted to hear what he had to say.
oh well, I'm going to.
Okay.
I'm going to, but I'm kind of moving on a little bit
Okay.
because when I'm thinking about the synonyms for trust, I mean it is. You can think of faith and I guess hope in one way, but there's a lot of other things that I think you think about when you think about trust. And in the book, it talks about, well, let's do this real quick. In the book here, I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but not too much. In a book on page 64 and 67, at the bottom, right above where it says character communicates, it says character makes trust possible, and trust makes leadership possible. That is the law of solid ground. And then over on 67 near the bottom, right above the beginning of the end of trust, a leader's good character builds trust among his followers. Then it says, but when a leader breaks trust, he forfeits his ability to lead. And once again, that's the law of solid ground. And I don't know, I just thought about this. Hopefully, you know, you all read it and et cetera, et cetera. But it just struck me as this has to be one of the most important chapters in the book on leadership. And as another thing I thought about leadership, you know, there's different categories, so to speak. If you're a leader, say, the pastor of the church, Or if you're a leader, say you're a platoon sergeant in the infantry, I got a mission to do, the platoon sergeant. But you got the pastor of a church, now you're still talking about leadership, but you're talking about something a lot more detailed, there's a lot more to it, and I think that is where character will come in, to like a pastor of a church.
President of the United States.
Well, yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, that's probably, it should be, let's put it that way, it should be, I would think. Or, go ahead.
This book was, I think, written in 1998.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so, what we've got almost 21 years since this book's written. Well, to prove your leadership or show your leadership, we've had so many cultural changes with social media. We used, in 1998 and a little earlier, we had 3 TV stations. You know, now we have 250 TV stations.
Yeah.
So in order to acknowledge solid ground, you have to be on your A game every second. And how many people can do that?
I was thinking a synonym would be like confidence. You know, if you have confidence in something or someone.
You can fight, right?
Yeah, right. You know,
I was thinking about
it's
character. I guess my next thing was trust and then character. What do you think of character, like a synonym for character?
I think of the other type of the word character, like, hey, you're a character.
Yeah, that's true. I say that a lot, actually. You're a character.
On page 62, I've had the privilege of working with Pastor Dave a lot over the last six years he's been here. And down there says, because everything in the church was going so well, I thought I could take a shortcut. Shortcuts usually come back to bite you, right? And what you do,
Really, what anyone does.
So I've observed Pastor Dave trying to do this, and to me it's very frustrating because we move so slow. When you're a businessman or in charge or large and in charge, you can make snap decisions, you can do whatever you want to do if somebody has faith in you as a leader. But it takes restraint to do, and I see Pastor Dave doing this.
The shortcut?
No shortcut.
Not
I
doing
would gather my leaders, cast visions for them, answer questions, and guide them through issues. What did we just go through? Okay. Then I would give them time to exert their influence with the next level of leaders in the church. Okay. And finally, once the timing was right, I would make general announcements to everyone, giving plenty of reassurance and encouraging people to be part of a new vision. But I didn't do any of those things. He's saying, but I didn't do any of those things. I took a shortcut, and it cost him greatly in his personal credit with this group of people. So people like Dave and other good leaders, I don't know if you feel Dave's a good leader or not, but I think he tries really hard. But when leaders take shortcuts and don't get us engaged, that's not keeping us on solid ground.
I mean, do you think he kind of took a shortcut, or he should have done something different?
No, but...
Yeah, the way you said it kind of confused me.
No, I don't think he took a shortcut.
Yeah.
But
It seems like he did it at the book set, you know.
But with the change in cultures that we now have, okay, it's hard to do those things.
I see the connection that you're making. Everything today is instant. And how we process things, with a tweet or an email.
Somebody's sitting in a meeting and they don't like just what you said, they stand up and they say something inappropriate or out of balance, not what was really said, or that kind of thing. And in the private sector, where I think what I think you do, you know, you have to make choices really quick, and you have to make, your bosses are asking you to define something, act on it, and do it. All right, so it's hard to slow yourself down and be methodical about it. And then it seems like when you do that, it takes forever to work it through the system. You know, where, I don't know, I'm talking too much, I guess.
Well, no, I agree with what you're saying. You know, sometimes people, especially like you said earlier, everybody wants something now. Okay, we got that, let's go to the next thing. But nobody wants to sit back, and think it through, I guess, like they should. I mean, I don't know.
It works really close with the law of navigation, like what you're talking about and what he did here, and how in his other scenario, when he put out his acrostic and got everything organized, it seems like that's what he was doing, but it was a weakness of his that he had to put attention towards, and whenever he just naturally said, no, we're just going to cut to the chase and get it done, that's whenever he broke trust. So it's kind of weird that naturally, you know, water runs downhill, and so sometimes we tend to make mistakes even though we're not trying to. It seems like that was his experience, but the point that I was piggybacking off of you, but I forgot what you just said. It was what I was playing with what you were just about to say, or what you had just said, but I lost it.
About people not taking enough time and thinking through it, or no?
Yeah. So when people when leadership doesn't take the time to write it down and see the vision themselves, and then learn how to navigate that, then they lose character. Like like he said in the beginning of the book, all the laws play together. Yeah. You can't have one without the other, because he lost trust because he didn't navigate these waters correctly. He gained trust in the other scenario with the law of navigation when he navigated correctly.
Even Debbie would know at times when we worked at the post office. Now, she did different job than I did, but actually she would see a lot of stuff. I used to tell people she was like the assistant postmaster, and really, for as long as she was there, and some of the stuff she did, and people would ask her stuff, she could see, and you could see like some of the leaders there, or the people in charge, they didn't all the time explain things. They would just do these abrupt decisions, pop, 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 pop. But when somebody like Debbie was there, she worked it, she is in the process, she could see what they were doing wrong. And sometimes you would tell them, and they would listen, but then you'd get the supervisors that were just arrogant, and it's so funny, then they'd mess up. She just grinned, come home and tell me, yep, they did this. But anyway, you know, here's, let me check out, here on page 58.
58?
Oh, no, well, this is, never mind, this was in this other book, I'm just kind of talking about myself. It says, it talks
and
about...
John, you get to take that one home, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
Like I said, character and trust, that's why I stuck those words up there. To me, that this is like the whole part of this chapter is character and trust, or trust and character. But it said, when a leader's character is strong, people trust him, and they trust in his ability to release their potential. That not only gives his followers hope for the future, but it also promotes a strong belief in themselves and their organization. I mean, that's a pretty big mouthful right there. Wouldn't you pretty much agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, he's talking about character, strong character, people trust in him. And, you know, I was just going to give an example. When Debbie and I first got married, she had 2 kids. One was 10 and one was 12. And I felt like, man, that's a responsibility to me. I thought, you know, if I'm going to do this, they're got to be front and center of what I'm thinking, you know.
Wow.
So, and, you know, I would be around them and stuff, and then after a while, I could see they were starting to trust me, because I never give them any reason not to trust me, you know. But it just makes me think about a leader's character. Strong people trust him in this character. But that's just one example of character and trust, even younger kids. And then there's a youth pastor. Say if you're a youth pastor and your kids, what if they observe you even something goofy like commenting about another girl or a woman? You know, they're going to think, they're going to get that idea, well, that's not good. Or they might see him drinking. They might see him going in and out of a bar or something. So, I mean, are they going to really listen to him now? You know, all of a sudden, his character and his trust just kind of faded away. So, I mean, sometimes being a leader, you know, it's a big deal at times. Do you really want to do that? I know sometimes when I think about it, I think, not that I plan on doing bad things, but it's just that, you know, you got a responsibility. That's just like when I married Debbie and she had 2 boys. I thought, you know, this is the shiznick, man. I can't just let it go and think, oh well, you know, they're gonna not think nothing about it. But anyhow, anybody else?
Yeah, one of the Timothy books. I don't mean to cut you off. You got something to say, John?
I was just about to say, you know, I was just like going to agree with what you were talking about. You know, you have to, if you're going to be a leader, you have to have, you can't do everything everybody's doing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because people are watching you, like you were saying. So it's good to keep like that in mind.
Yeah. Even there was something, I don't know where it is now, about they talked about Billy Graham.
Yeah.
I mean, goodness, that's another thing. If you're running around preaching and you're traveling around, I mean, he had a rule that he wouldn't even go with women wherever, even out to eat. He would never have them in his hotel room or something, even a reporter or anything like that. And, you know, that's just what you got to do.
Yeah, that was page 65 about Billy Graham.
Yeah.
I think Dave said he's going to the Billy Graham Memorial in Charleston, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that existed. That's pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Have you gone, Gary?
No, I haven't. We wanted to, but we couldn't make it. On page 68 of the book, I don't know about you, Larry, but I lived that era. You know, and I think that is a period in time where we started shifting in our country about trust and leadership, because these guys lied to us. McNamara.
Oh, yeah.
And all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And you would see them on TV, and Johnson, you know, they invented the Vietnam War by a bold-faced lie, and they pulled us into it. And then McNamara he went on the TV, and he didn't tell, here again, they didn't tell the whole truth, little bits and pieces of the truth. And then we went to the Iraq War, and we had Colin Powell, okay, and he was lied to, evidently. I read his autobiography. He was lied to by people, and he went on the face of TV and radio and that, and told a story as he believed it. And all these things come back to bite us. But Vietnam was a horrible, young people started rebelling because they couldn't trust. And they didn't believe in the leadership was telling them the truth. And I think that was the start of where we're moving down the road today. And every decade or every year seems like it gets worse. Do you remember that?
Well, I remember I was young. I mean, I can remember my dad commenting and my mom reading the paper about Vietnam and this and that, but I was maybe 12 or 13. Even when Kent State happened, you know, I mean, I remember that because it was just in Ellen, but it was just my dad. I can remember him, GD hippies, rah, 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 rah. Dad, what's going on?
I was in San Diego, California when the news came on riot at Kent State.
Wow.
And I actually have friends that were there, and the stories they tell me is not the same stories others have said. You know, so.
Well, you know, the tragic thing about it was you had young people protesting and getting out of control. You also had young people the same exact age being on the line
Carrying
that was
them
supposed
M60s.
yeah, that was supposed to be the one, so they were,
Yeah.
that was a really awful time.
Yeah.
I thought it was an awful time of life. I
And
really
then you
did.
had
It's like the
people
whole world
not
was
even
blowing
lived
up.
around here that
But if
joined
we
in.
were we were in
Got
San
trouble.
Diego glued to the TV because this was next door to where we lived.
Yeah. I just find it interesting that human nature like desires trust. Like I think that's definitely like a principle we can kind of lift from in between the pages here, of people like all you're saying what a terrible time it was that we didn't trust the leadership.
Mhm.
Like that's because fundamentally we desire to have leadership, A, and we desire to trust that leadership. So therefore we can operate like what you said about rebellion. I had an epiphany. It's almost like there's a spectrum, right? Or a ray. Is it ray or segment? I think it's a segment. And you have on one side rebellion, and you have on the other side like complete trust and unity, right? And it depends on unity and rebellion. And I'm developing this as I'm talking. Trust is the factor in the middle that causes you to either go towards unity or towards rebellion.
Yeah.
That's true.
I find it very difficult to understand. You put 30 words down on a blank piece of paper about anything, and you have 20 people in a room. 10 are going to read those words one way, and 10 are going to read it. We have a really smart world, a really smart group of people. But how can 10 people look at those same comments, those same words, and interpret them this way, and the other 10 look at them this way?
Because of their life experiences and who they are, and their personalities, and God created us all different.
Yeah. And he gave
That's
us
Like Cindy's hair.
he gave us a brain
unicorn
to
here.
think for ourselves. But with a brain to think for yourself, then you want to believe in leadership and character and us.
But I also think in that day and age too, young people were using that whole thing as an excuse to do whatever the heck they wanted to do
Right.
drugs, go have sex with 10 people. I mean, it was a filthy, nasty, it was an awful time.
I
It really was.
I was stationed
They
in
said, "Oh,
Boston
we're fighting
Commons
ourselves."
in Boston.
Yeah.
And
you're
Boston
fighting
Commons was
yourselves
wide
all
open
over.
territory. And
Yeah.
we couldn't wear our uniforms. We could not wear our uniforms.
And see, my uncle was in Vietnam, and I remember watching it as slightly a different skew because he was a young kid, you know, like 17 or 18 years old when he went off to that war. And he, you know, every time he came home, he was like a different person, and you could see that it was destroying him, you know, the war and what he experienced over there. And he never would talk about the awfulness of that war and what was going on over there. I know that, you know, he's deceased now, but I'm pretty sure that he experienced children being blown up and different things, and he never forgave himself for being involved in some of that stuff. And then when he came home, the disrespect and the hatred that people were giving those guys, that was awful too.
Yeah.
You know.
I remember that friend of mine, make it short, his basic thing, what he did is he rode on a helicopter, and then they kind of went in and picked up the collateral damage, you know. So really the fighting was over once they went to get in there, but he still had to man a 50 caliber machine gun that was mounted on the side of that helicopter of his, and he said the same thing. He would just pick up dead people, even American citizens or whatever it was, the North Vietnamese, we were fighting with them or they were on our side. He'd pick up and he'd feel bad because, you know, I'm sure those people had some kind of family local. It wasn't even soldiers. But, and when he went over there, he was only 19. I mean, he got injured, et cetera, but I remember the first time he told me about it. No, we're off on this tangent, but first time
our leader will bring us back. Don't worry, Larry.
the first time he told me about it, I was riding in a car with him, down to see his dad in Steubenville. So we started talking about it. But see, he didn't talk about it either. But with him and I in the car, he started opening up and I started asking questions, I'm serious. I was crying by the time we got home because I'm thinking, man, that's how old you were and you had to go through that stuff? I mean, I can't imagine. I can't imagine that.
On page 69, it says, as the American people's trust in their leaders deteriorated, so does their willingness to follow them. But that's a statement that if you're a head of a group, or if you're a head of a company, or a church, or anything, that's a true statement.
Right. Well, and then you can also, I mean, I worked for a company one time that wanted us to, we always had, if we had a shortage, we requested credit, but if we had an overage, like if the other companies sent the wrong things, we also requested that they bill. Well, all of a sudden the company said, no, we're not gonna ask them to bill us anymore for the overages. And I thought, well, that is not right. And I mean, all of us people in the office signed a thing and a letter and, we created and we said, no, we're not doing this. Because it's really dishonest. You're asking them to credit you when you're short on something, but then if they send you 12 widgets that was the wrong thing and, then you're not asking them to bill you for that or return it or something, that's really crooked,
You know, it's funny. See, you can run into all kinds of situations like that in life, but that's the truth. I mean, you're going to do the right thing and the wrong thing, and I guess that's where the character and the trust part comes in,
Well, yeah, and like in a business situation with your customers, I mean, if they find out that you're selling them something that they don't need or that they can't afford, or, I mean, you're really kind of lying to them, that's the first time you're going to lose that customer forever.
In 1986, I went into business, and I would do a project for $30,000 or $40,000 on a handshake. I'd shake your hand, and the guy shaking my hand knew if there was a problem, I would own up to it or he would own up to it. In the next 10 years, a different level of managers and leaders came into the first generation business. The first generation business leader was worried about you and cared about you. Okay, I would walk into their office and they said, Gary, how's it going this week? How's your cash flow? Two separate companies. Are we paying our bills to you? Is there anything we need? The second generation leader says, well, we want 45 days credit.
Yeah, we're going to use your money for 90 days.
We want a 3% discount, but then they pay you in 60 days. And then the third generation leader would say, I want 2% discount in that 30 and I'm going to pay you 90. And tell you if you don't accept it, we'll go to another vendor.
And I always tell them anymore, go, because they're going to get it from me soon. You're going to get it from me sooner or later.
But here again, we got generational things that are being
changing.
taught in colleges and business schools and
In your private dealings, like if we're looking for somebody to do work for us at the house for something, do you tend to go to a Christian company? Do you automatically trust?
I don't. Not anymore.
From business
Really?
research, some of those are the worst people to do business with.
Yeah. See, I tend to go there first, and then I'll look for references and things. But I do because I'm assuming, that they are a good character.
Some people put that up there to get you to assume, and they have no intentions of living up to that character or that.
And it's really a shame. I mean, it's a shame on our society because it used to be you could trust those people. If you couldn't trust everybody else, you could trust those people. So now it's just, it's really
On 63,
a crapshoot.
it really, and I've had the worst experiences with Christian business.
Have you?
Quote unquote Christian business people. I find more trust in non-Christians in
Wow.
the business world.
Wow.
As soon as I realized I was wrong, I publicly apologized to my people and asked for forgiveness. Your people know when you make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
The real question is whether you're going to fess up. I think parenting kind of goes in along with that as far as that leadership goes. Like, they know. Like, the kids know. Like, I knew.
Yeah, I did too.
But, like, you get more respect going into the next law next week whenever you do, like, ask for forgiveness. Like, that gains respect. Add change to your pocket.
And it gives people trust.
People
I
that
was
trust.
laughing at that because my two daughters, Holly and Laura, the Carters were tough.
Yeah.
Sandy and I. My wife is tougher than me, but I had to put up we had the 5 W's: what, when, where, why, and how. And there was an H on the end. And if they couldn't answer where you're going, why you're going to be there, who, where, when, why, and how, and all that kind of stuff, then they didn't get to go. So these other kids' parents, the kids never went to their parents till they sent Laura and Holly to me. And if they got past Sandy and I, they would go home and say, well, the Carters said it was okay.
Yeah.
I was reading that.
You know, it says here, it says, who do you think has the greater potential to achieve great dreams and have a positive impact on others? Someone who is honest, disciplined, and hardworking, or someone who is deceitful, impulsive, and lazy? I mean, it's just...
Sometimes the first category doesn't get the credit for that.
Yeah.
You know, the most outgoing person, the most flamboyant, the most gregarious, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they market themselves in a way that the hard worker, steady Eddie, good fellow, good lady, they get overlooked sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like
Is that a
that
good
goes
statement?
I feel like that goes for a little while, but in a long-term relationship with people, I feel like the person who's doing hard work, always on time, follows through with what they say, that person, especially today, is gonna be noticed, I feel.
Yes, as long as they survive in the meantime.
Yes.
It just takes longer for that person.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of like how, you know how people say, people have like 15 seconds of fame or something like that, or 15 minutes of fame, or like, no, somebody's like an overnight success, but like really like it took 20 years to be an overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like how that slow and steady is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Steady Eddie right there.
Mm-hmm.
Slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, I have a tortoise.
And then like somebody might have success like really fast, but then they fizzle out because they don't know how to deal with being a leader or that type of success. Like that happened with a lot of people in my business that I do, my side business. Like some people have like real good results and then they'll like fizzle out.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
That kind of goes back to the parable of the sower and the seed, though. If you haven't read Mark chapter 4 in a while, that really helps with, you know, the numbers games of downline.
Right.
But I love the aspect of what you were just talking about, like the character, Larry, versus like the honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I pulled it up. Where did it go? Honest, disciplined, and hardworking, but someone who's deceitful, impulsive, and lazy.
Yeah.
Right, but that's kind of the thing, is that impulsive is like quick, right? So it's going to happen quick, which is an advertisement. You're going to see it in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and that's it. Deceitful, what are you trying to portray in an advertisement? The best face. Put your best face on, lipstick on the pig, make it happen. And then lazy. I've heard successful people are ambitiously lazy before. Like, they want to work really hard so they never have to work again. So like they don't want to work the rest of their lives. That's what a lot of successful people I've heard. I don't know, have you heard that, Gary, before? So like that combination of deceitful, impulsive, and lazy, when we're reading it, we're like, oh, of course, honest, disciplined, and hardworking. But like, I'm kind of being the devil's advocate a little bit here, to be like, I think the reason that we overlook the honest, disciplined, and hardworking person is because the other person is so good at marketing, so good at attention grabbing, so good at getting like for you, how do you even find the person to hire out for a small job? They have to have marketed themselves, whether it's a Google search and having a website, whatever that is, and then we look at it and we judge it. But that's why I love doing business off referrals, because then it's like, who have you done business with for 5 years? You know, because that's where I want access to. But it's so hard to get that, because naturally as consumers, we typically go to, what's the best advertisement? I watch commercials not because I care about the product. I just want to see who's doing different marketing things.
Have you ever, I can't believe I'm the only one that does this. Have your smartphone out, you're watching commercials on TV, and you see a commercial, and then you Google the commercial and you ask for the review for that product or that service. You know, almost all of them have terrible reviews, terrible histories. I would never use that company. I would never try it sometime.
Yeah, like so.
It's terrible. The commercials you think are so good, and then you find the review. And I know you can't trust all reviews. When there's lots of them that says one thing or another, you got to believe something's up with that.
Well, I think too, people probably review when they're mad about something.
Oh yeah, way more
faster
likely to
than
do
they,
that.
because I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guilty of not.
Surveys have proven
yes,
that. Yeah.
good reviews. So, and then I feel like it's hard to get rid of those next. So you got to look at the time period of it. I always go to the Better Business Bureau and look and see what's there, because that'll come out. You know,
I think
really
there's going to
quick.
be a new global type of trust currency product, whether it's Google or secondary type of Google like DuckDuckGo. Privacy and trust is really starting to become a lot more of a commodity in the global scale. Because everything we've just discussed right here, if there was some trusted resource that, I don't know, trusted.com.
Seems to, I like.
I mean,
we
would all
There
be
you go.
there.
There you go. There's your next
right.
thing to do.
My next time, yeah.
I'm starting to get emails from some places I just visited wanting me to do a survey. I make a phone call somewhere, in the next an hour or a half a day, they're sending me a survey rating the service. You go to the auto dealer, you go to the eye doctor, you go whatever. To me, I'm getting tired of filling out those things.
I don't. I just don't
No.
fill them out.
Well,
I don't either.
part of me wants to reward them for good service, but I'm tired of it.
Oh, well, if they did a good job, they'll sometimes take the time. But yeah, it's struggle.
You know, the chapter here, I mean, you can talk about different things, and that's good. But you know, if you really want to be a leader, I think you have to read this and take this stuff into consideration and strive to do this. You know, it's just like when you're talking about when we had the house painted. Well, I knew of those guys. The name of their painting company is Rock Solid Painting. They had it on their Facebook, different pictures and different reviews that people talked about it. And then Tom knew him, so I'm just saying, I mean, he really portrayed what he said, you know.
But I guess there again, it goes to the character of the person. You know, you're looking at the character of the person that referred you, and then you're doing your own. You have to do a lot more research than what we'd all like to think we had to do with people,
We have more
you
at our
know?
fingertips, but yet we have to do more research to see if it's truthful.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that is so true.
Well, because 30 years ago, somebody said, hey, so-and-so did a really good job. Here, come and see my house.
Right.
You would know, and you would trust them. Or they did a crummy job.
Right.
I mean, and it was somebody you knew, and you trusted their word, and their word was valuable to you.
Well, and society has just gotten away from character and trust. You know, it's not about character anymore. You know, it's like, well, who can
How can you
get
be
this
cool?
or who can do that, and you know, how can I make myself great? And
Yeah.
so the character is.
I've heard a phrase that works in such alignment with that, which is trust doesn't matter. I'm not saying I agree with the trust here, the quote here, but it said trust doesn't matter. It's about mutual self-interest. And I thought that, I saw that in a movie recently, and it's been branded on my forehead of like, when I'm doing a deal with somebody that I don't know or they don't have a track record or stuff, can I trust that this person has mutual self-interest in whatever the deal is, that they're going to be happy with the deal we're making? Because then that reframes my mindset of, do I trust the person? Because people that I've trusted before in the past have let me down. And I've probably let other people down myself. I mean, I don't want to do that, but I've probably done that. So I think that gives me some perspective to, when I'm making a deal anyways, to be like, is this person truly mutually self-interested? Because when they're like, I'm going to do a favor for you, that's the yellow flag. Like, no, you're not. You're saying that. But that just comes with experience in business.
The old, my word is my bond. You know what I mean? It's like the handshake, you know, but it's a lot scarier
The
now.
latter part of that story was in the latter years of my company. I couldn't do that.
Right.
I had to have a contract, and had to be some teeth in it, and you know.
Right, because you're dealing with the.
But it went from a handshake to a contract.
Was it during the period, the time frame of the?
Yeah, it was 86 to 2000. Yeah, but.
You know, it'll be interesting to keep going through the book, you know, and I'm looking forward to it. But it's funny how leadership, you know, different aspects of it are different, you know, but it's almost like, to me, unless you're going to be kind of sinister, you're going to have character, and you're going to have to trust this leader, you know. But like I said before, it might be a military sergeant doing a little whatever to go capture something. You still got to lead them, or somebody like the president, or somebody you really have to trust and has to have good character.
There's a word that I have not read the whole book. I'm only reading it chapter by chapter.
I am too.
But there's a word that I haven't seen listed that has been really important to me, is example. Has example been, it's very important for a leader or a navigator or a process manager or anything to set the example. That's what Billy Graham did.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I almost got fired from a very, very high-paying position because I did Billy Graham. I was a sales manager where I had a team of women and men. And I made a foolish statement one time. I said, I'd rather work with men than women. Because I don't want to be put in a position to where it's a he said, she said situation.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And an older woman, not a younger woman, went to my manager and said that I disrespected her and that I didn't want to work with women. My comment was I preferred working with men. Because I had to get in vehicles with women, I had to meet them at hotels, I had to meet them at restaurants, I had to get up at 2 in the morning and go somewhere with somebody. And I got so chastised. And that stayed with me a long time. Because of that, it was an innocent, off the top of my head statement. But that's what Billy Graham, he would never get in an elevator with a woman.
Well, there were a couple examples not that long ago where people had done that. There was somebody running for Senate or something in a southern state, I don't remember now. But it was just maybe in the spring. And he did that because a reporter wanted to interview him, and she wanted to ride in his car, and he said, you know, I'd be happy to meet you, you know, at this restaurant or something, and there's other people around or whatever, but not in my vehicle. They made the whole thing, they made him, you know, he was the worst person possible, you know, and it wasn't her in particular, it was the idea. He said, I have more respect for my wife, and I'm looking out for myself and for her as well, you know. And I thought how sad that is just a lost art, a lost respect for
Well,
human beings.
I think this
you
Me
know.
Too movement, I know we're getting away from a lot of stuff,
Well, it's
has really
character.
hurting young women.
Yeah.
Because now men of leadership are going to be hesitant to take on women to travel with them and be their next in line and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's just my opinion about that, but that caused me a great deal of grief. Innocent, wasn't even thinking, I didn't mean it the way it said, but
Yeah.
Don't you think you gotta be kind of happy to be a leader? Gotta have good attitude
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah.
That's kind of along with the character. You gotta be positive. With that being said, I gotta read you guys something, little something. I just thought this was funny, so it might be off the beaten path, but it's really something to think about, though. Really, it is. It says, there's a family nobody likes to meet. They live, it is said, on Complaining Street. In the city of never are satisfied, the river of discontent beside. They growl at that and they growl at this. Whatever comes there is something amiss, and whether their station be high or humble, they are known by the name of Grumble. The weather is always too cold, summer and winter alike. They scold. Nothing goes right with the folks you meet down on gloomy Complaining Street. They growl at the rain, they growl at the sun. In fact, their growling is never done. And if everything pleased them, there isn't a doubt they'd growl that they'd nothing to grumble about. So it were wisest to keep our feet from wandering into Complaining Street and never to growl whatever we do, lest we be mistaken for grumblers too. Let us learn to walk in smile and song, no matter if things do sometimes go wrong, and then be our station high or humble will never belong to the family of Grumble. That's it.
Nice, like it.
You sure don't want a grumbling boss.
Surely don't.
What was
Powerful.
a couple weeks ago, the sermon at church, didn't it have something to do with people complaining or grumbling or? Well, that was more than a couple weeks ago. That was a little while ago.
well, you have different organizations that require different types of leadership.
Yes.
Okay, when a church, unless you're a mega church, your church is run by volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, take our church, we have 2 paid members, 2 pastors. The rest are all volunteers. Now, if we had a church where we had 10 paid staff members, you lead them differently than you lead volunteers. You set the same goals, you set the same agenda, but it's hard to chastise a volunteer. It's how to say, Cindy, I don't like the way you're doing this. Or, Debbie, thank you so well. I'm glad you got the point of view I wanted. or Andrew, thanks for stepping up the bat. You know, or Andrew, you know, this class isn't going very well. You know,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to look at this in relevance to the church we're currently in and those kinds of things. Now, pastor, in the history of pastors' work, he's dealt with large churches, with paid staff, with highly successful members, that if he thought of an idea or somebody else and it was mentioned, it was somebody had the money to buy it or provide it or do it, you know. Well, that's not the church we have today, you know. And maybe
You mean this church?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, he ran a very large Christian ministry where he had doers and staff members and stuff. Well, here we're all volunteers, and so there's a different, and that goes back to where on page 62, where I see pastor doing this, okay? And sometimes it takes forever to get something that I know you can get done really quicker than 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Cindy? Okay, but because of our nature, this is how it has to go.
Yeah.
And when you take a shortcut, in either one of those types of organizations.
Yeah. So true. So true. I heard a quote recently that was the only slow to change thing is people that are slow to change. And that was kind of proverbial in that sense of like, we can change things instantly if we all agreed and we all came to the same conclusion on our own to say, we want to make this happen now. Boom. But that's not the way it works. It's I have an idea or you have an idea, and then you share it with somebody, and then they think about how they were thinking about it with their life circumstances, and then you have to interpret or reinterpret that dream, and then they have to become convinced of it and see what's in it for them, and then, it's just such a long process. But that's really where trust is built, I think, is in the long processes that I hate doing. I mean, I'd rather be like John and just fire the people and, move on. So, I mean, it seems so much more efficient, but people aren't about efficiency. It's about relationships. One of the things I was thinking about the solid ground, and really everything with this whole book, is it's all about relationships. How can we add value? How can we build trust? How can we deepen respect and love and culture into who we are and how we deal with people? So
it's funny you say that. Our pastor, like the first church we went to, so to speak, he would say the exact same thing that you just said. He says it's about relationships. If you don't have relationships with people, I mean, that's what life is. I mean, really it is. If you have bad, I mean, whatever. That's just like what we went through here. I mean, if you stop and you think about it, I don't know, you want to call it common sense or whatever, take away that somebody might have lost something. But gosh, if you're going to have an organization come in and really help you, move forward, it's almost like, well, why wouldn't you do that? Well, just what you just said is because some people aren't really thinking in that vein, because this and that and the other thing, because this, so...
Some people just hate change altogether. They just
there you go.
resist it altogether all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine how boring life would be if you never changed anything. It's like, really?
It's so funny getting with that. Me and Debbie, we saw this house.
So boring, yeah.
We saw this house. We even stopped there today, just on a whim, and we're looking in the window. Wow, this is cool. Blah 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 blah. And it was like 3 blocks from here. That didn't really have nothing to do with it. But then we went home and checked it out, and it's under contract. But I was thinking people change. I mean, I don't know for sure if we would have actually done it, but we were thinking about it, and even Debbie said on the way over, gosh, we could have actually done that. Well, we can't now because it's under contract. But, we wouldn't have been afraid of the change. I mean, sure, would I miss where we live now? Probably. But for all intents and purposes, seeing the house where it is, that I would have done it. Probably I would have done it. But you see now, if you would have brought it to some people, oh no, let me think about it for 5 months. Oh, the house already sold. You know what I'm saying? You're just gonna miss the whole boat because you're just sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah.
So
I think maybe that has a little bit to do with, I don't want to go too far on a rant, but I do think that maybe upbringing has a little bit to do with that, because if you're a child and your parents always did the same thing, getting up, taking you to school, going to work, coming home, picking you up, and that was your routine in life, and you got so comfortable in routine that anytime you did something different, you either were frowned upon or didn't get the appreciation or the love or affection you needed or desired for whatever your extracurricular thing was, then maybe you just always found more comfort and certainty of this is the path. And as soon as they became an adult, they stumbled, they did it on their own, they had that, you know, young adult anxiety or will, but then they married, got settled down, got back into the routine that they had done for 18 years. And then they were just happy with not having to think about new things.
Well,
So,
I think too, if people don't encourage you to make changes and then just keep encouraging you to, you know, do different things or whatever, if people make you feel bad when you do try those things, then you're not going to want to, you know, and let's face it, it is uncomfortable. Sometimes, you know, anytime especially you change a major thing, it's like, oh yeah, I remember I had to do it this way, not that way. You know, it's a whole new shake-up of everything.
Yeah.
So,
but from a business standpoint, that goes right back to the McDonald's thing where they just were here and the guy said, well, we got to go and do more. You know, we've got to go in this direction, you know. So I suppose if you're a business leader, you can't be afraid. You can't really continue to do that same thing.
and it is a fear-driven, I think it is a fear-driven thing, not wanting to confront change.
Right.
It's so much fun living on the edge.
I agree.
It's easier to roll with it than it is
really.
to constantly be fighting it,
I
isn't
like
it?
the comfort zone, but being on the edge is exciting.
You're being relevant, and that's exciting.
Yeah. Hey, can I read you guys one more little story? It's only 2 paragraphs long. It's about leadership. It says, an incident is told of the First American War about an officer who set his men to cut some trees which were needed to make a bridge. There were not nearly enough men, and the work was getting very slowly. Up rode a commanding-looking man and spoke to the officer in charge, who was urging on his men but doing nothing himself. You haven't enough men for the job, have you? No, sir, we need some help. Why don't you lend a hand yourself? Asked the man on the horseback. Me, sir? Why, I am a corporal, replied the officer, looking rather affronted at the suggestion. Ah, true, quietly replied the other, and getting off his horse, he labored with the men until the job was done. Then he mounted again, and he rode off. He said to the officer, Corporal, the next time you have a job to put through and too few men to do it, you had better send for the commander-in-chief. I will come again. That was General George Washington. So you talk about character. There he got the job done. So
I always heard some of the best leaders, bosses, are people that would say, and I've had a few of these, that they would never ask you to do what they themselves wouldn't do.
I always say that at work.
Do you say that?
Well, you know why? Because people sometimes will balk at cleaning the bathroom. Well, I'm sorry, man, but I don't do what happens in that bathroom. I don't do that, but I clean it up. So if I can clean it up, sometimes you can clean it up.
And some people respond to that, they'll say, well, yeah, that's, you know what I mean? I mean, I would hope they, I don't know, but.
So the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, which is legendarily like one of the best defense forces in the world, they have a saying which is Ah Harai, which is literally follow me. It's what Jesus said in the Bible when he was talking. It's Ah Harai, because it's following me into battle, not go and do this. It's Ah Harai. I'm out in front, and that's what I love about the story with Shaw. 63 or 4 or 5, somewhere around there. Maybe it was later. It's in the chapter. Almost 600 and a half men, right? And Shaw, who had courageously led his men in to the top of the fort parapet in the first assault, was killed. The first assault, he was leading his men. 67, paragraph 2, last sentence.
yeah.
Like, you know, that's just, it's character, you know, and it's leading, it's trust, it's those relationships. It's like what George Washington did. You probably heard the story about all the bullet holes in his jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, now he didn't die from the bullet hole. Now, what was it again now? Or
He didn't die from the bullet holes.
Right,
They were in
right.
his jackets and stuff,
Yeah.
but he didn't die.
Yeah,
And
right.
I love how
Protected.
what Dave said last Sunday, which is the safest place to be is in the will of God.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever that is, because sometimes we get scared, but then are we trusting God as our solid ground? How's our trust in Him? You know, we're leading others, but are we being led by the Holy Spirit? The sons of God are led by the Spirit of God.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You know, it's funny you say that. If you read some of the stuff that they went through back then, fighting the British and the French and all that stuff that was going on back then, I forget now the battle, what it was, but they were running from the British, which was coming at them this way. Well, they had to cross, I can't remember exactly, they had to cross like a river or a body of water. And when they did it, they had to get some little boats or whatever, and the British was right on their tail. Well, then at the time, all of a sudden, fog just dropped through. They got over on these little boats that they had, and they made it across, and then the fog lifted, and they kept going. Now,
Was that the Potomac?
I don't know for sure.
Delaware or the Potomac?
But they were surrounded, and they were just going to get annihilated, and they were thinking, oh my gosh, we're in trouble. How are we going to get across this river? And if we get out there, they're going to see us, and they're just going to blow us right out of the water.
Yeah.
But it just happened where the fog came through, and they were able to get away. Now,
You know what, though? In that day and age, people actually believed in God and actually trusted Him. And I mean, when you read anything from back then,
George Washington was a strong believer.
even who the people say, "Oh, Jefferson was a," you know, he was not. I mean, you read anything from any of those people back then, and their whole hope was that God was going to bring them through it and you know, make what happened, and it did.
you know, it's kind of like, or in Scripture somewhere, you don't get because you don't ask. It's not like I'm asking for a new car, but just like those instances there. You got to trust me. You got to believe me. I'll help you, you know. I just think even when I was reading this chapter, gosh, I took my Bible out and I was going to read you something about Daniel and Meshach, Abednego, and his buddies in the furnace, and then they got out. They weren't singed or weren't even burnt. And the king, the Nebuchadnezzar, I mean, that made a big deal out of him. He thought, wow, they got out alive? And after that, the king told him, don't touch those guys. They trusted in their God, and their God came through for them. But, you know, there's that word trust again, and believing and character. So I think in the long run, if you don't have those attributes, you might fake it for a while, but you're going to be in trouble. And I think of sometimes the politicians, and I'm not trying to pick on them, but you think about Hillary Clinton or whoever at times. I mean, gosh, she in the past, she's done some shady things, and she was successful, but at the same time, she wasn't very successful.
I wouldn't want her to be my friend because a lot of her friends.
There you go.
Sorry. I mean, the list is like really long. It's kind of scary. It's frightening.
On page 70, it says, I recommend that you focus on these three main areas: integrity, authenticity. I don't think I said that right.
You're close.
And discipline.
Yeah.
And those three things can send you a long way in life, whether you're a man or a woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know? The smartest person in my life said to me one time, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. That was my wife. Because I have a tendency to come right to the point. And she taught my daughters to approach me by, it's not what you say, girls, it's how you say it. And that, when you do that, it goes a lot further than being in your face and angry and ugly person. So, But that's her. She told me that.
Yeah. Those two words together, every day. I've been noticing that in the past few weeks on a lot of things that I'm reading. It's like every day. No matter if you feel like it or not, every day.
Yeah.
So I wrote that in big letters and stuck it up in my office where I can every day.
Yeah.
I mean, every day, because it matters and it all kind of builds on each other, and it's every day.
You would love Today Matters by John Maxwell. That's his book, Today Matters, where he talks about the importance of every day and his 12 steps to how he organizes his everyday to make every day count. And I think it was his mentor, John Wooden, the UCLA basketball coach, who won like 1,000 championships. Just had an amazing, no matter what players were there, he was winning championships. He said, make every day your masterpiece. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard John Maxwell repeat that through different audios or tapes or books or whatever.
It just makes you feel bad though, because like this weekend I was really not feeling well, and I didn't do anything. I mean, I was just
but that's a masterpiece sometimes.
so lazy. And
you can't judge yourself too hard, right?
I didn't read, I didn't do nothing. I was just like, oh gosh.
On the 7th day, God rested.
Yeah.
So you know what? Resting is a part of masterpiece.
I had the privilege of recruiting people for a lot of positions over my years, and I would ask you, Cindy, why would you want to be a salesperson, or why would you? And the number one word they would say to me, I want the freedom. When they wanted to be freedom to set their schedule, freedom to do this. Well, I would say, well, freedom is a two-edged sword. Freedom to do and freedom to not do. And the people that excel set their schedules to excel. That doesn't mean freedom to get up at 10 o'clock when you should be up at 8.
Right.
Stop work at 2 when you should work till 6. So I said freedom's a two-edged sword.
Hey, you said it's 8:10. We got about 5 minutes. I gotta tell you guys.
My phone's dead, so I have no idea.
Oh, that's all right.
It is 8:10.
I gotta come up with one more thing. Now, think about, everybody see that movie, The Karate Kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
that was
old
a
one or
big
the new
deal.
one?
Well, the old,
original.
the original.
Wipe on, wipe off.
Yeah. Now, when you think about that movie, that was like Rocky or Jaws or, what's that little dude with a finger?
E.T.
E.T. I mean, that was a big movie, and they even made a second one, but whatever. But when you think about what that movie was about, there was little Miyagi, and he was teaching Danielson what to do. Well, Danielson, he was all wound up. I'm going to fight these guys. I mean, that's what he wanted to learn. But Miyagi, if you remember, and even I'm thinking, well, what is he doing? He'd have him wax his car, and they'd have paint the fence. And he was working how long before he actually got to
doing
any karate and stuff. But you see, Miyagi, his character was all about character. I mean, and he showed that he cared about Danielson, and then after a while, Danielson started getting into him, and look how successful he was. But to me, that's a perfect example. And then Danielson trusted him, so that's a perfect example of character and trust. The Karate Kid. I don't know why I thought about that, but it just made me think about that movie. Anyhow, is it time to wrap up, or isn't it like 8:15?
You're the leader, Larry.
Okay, well, let's
We're
do that.
here till you let us dismiss class.
It's 8:12.
Okay, well, any closing thoughts or anything? What are we doing next week?
The law of respect.
The law of respect.
Now that's 7. That's the one right after this one.
I'm just calling it the
Okay,
law
there it
of John Wesley.
That kind of goes with the character and trust.
Yeah.
Respect.
Oh, you know what? That's the handbook. Yeah, you can take that or
Yeah,
the
that's for him for
workbook.
next week.
Yeah.
Let me see. I don't think I've left anything in there now. You know what I did? I started. Don't pay any attention.
So
I did that thinking, oh no, I shouldn't have done that, but there you go.
It's alright. You can just pay for the book. Anyway.
And you don't have to send that back or nothing.
No, it's
Okay.
fine. It's my personal copy. So.
Sorry, I started doing it and I'm sitting there at home in the bedroom going, oh no, what am I doing?
Well, I'm glad you're using it and taking
Yeah.
notes and stuff. Like for me, I'm not doing a lot of writing in the books themselves sometimes, and sometimes I am. So,
Yeah.
like for this book, I kind of want to like read it and reread it and stuff. I know this is a Bible of leadership. I mean, it's stood the test of time, and it has this law. The book itself has the law of solid ground. Is it word for word authenticated? Absolutely not. But my gosh, you know, if I can live by these 21 principles and laws throughout my life, reviewing the book once a year, every other year, and that really characterizes and helps me develop that character. You know, starting it younger has helped me get to where I am now, but starting it now is going to help me to where I'm going to get later. Every day. Like
Every day.
Every day. Every day.
Yeah.
You know, they statistically say that people that want to be leaders or be really good at sales or really good at something never read a book on it.
I hate sales.
They try to
I do.
learn
Wouldn't be a good
by
sales.
osmosis or watching or observing. You know, if you pin somebody down over, where did you hear that from? Or have you ever read a book on this? Most people cannot relate that to something they may be able to do an article,
Yeah.
but not a book.
That's
Crazy.
To love
Well,
the product
a
that
closing
you're selling.
thought that I do want to
Right.
throw out there. I would look it up, but my phone's dead. It was in 1 Timothy or 2 Timothy, I think. Maybe 1st, 2nd Peter, something like that, where it was talking about desiring leadership. And it was the Message Bible, so it's kind of a devotional type thing, but it just reiterated, like, those of you that are in leadership in the church, you know, are called to these different standards, and they're listed out. Do y'all remember which book or chapter that was?
Probably maybe 1 Peter. It sounds like,
Sounds like
in
1
1
Peter.
Peter,
We'll
but
go with 1
I
Peter.
don't remember. It's not really.
So, like, that's something to really consider. And scripturally, I know, Cindy, you're always tying things back to this book and the Bible. We
I'm
had mentioned
I'm
that before.
trying because
Well,
yeah.
That
There's
scripture,
a-
I think, is huge on that.
It talks about if you want to be a deacon or a leader in the church, you need to abide by these principles.
Yeah, like husband of one wife,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and
And
you're
so-
going to be judged more
more harshly.
harshly.
Yeah,
Yes.
as well. So it's something that I was just like, I kind of want to just throw that out there and keep that in the forefront of our minds as we're leading. Sometimes we don't have the choice of leadership. Sometimes it's just on us, right? And we're just there and we're leading, right?
Well, and I feel like in this particular body of people, that
Mhm.
happens a lot. And that's why I
Mhm.
thought it would be good, because I found myself in those things. If I want
Yeah.
something to change, that means I have to do it.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so then you become the leader,
Yeah.
you know, in whatever thing. And so then I need to know how to do it, because nobody ever gave me any classes or told me what to do.
Yeah, and here you are, and you've been eating away at it. I love seeing your growth and how you're applying all this stuff.
Hey,
Awesome.
I have some good news, guys. I went to Akron Children's Hospital today. Remember I said I put that application in? And she said, I'm so excited. And she said, we have not had a face painter for years. It's been years here. And I thought they were just gonna have me do their events and stuff like that, because of the whole like germ thing or whatever. But she said, I just want you to know that we are gonna try to figure this out, because I want you to be able to go into a child's room and be able to spend time with them as long as you want and do whatever they want. And if you think they need to sit there and have a conversation and with their family or whatever, then that's what's going to happen.
Oh,
Wow.
cool.
And yeah, and I thought, wow, that, you know, even if I don't decide that I want to do something with face painting later,
Mhm.
to me, I feel like this would be something that I feel like would be a really cool ministry, because you could not only impact maybe the kid for the day, but you know, you might have an opportunity to pray with the people and
Impact their
something.
families,
Never
yeah.
know where we'll lead.
Yeah.
And the nurses, those are kind of the unseen people, I think,
Yes.
sometimes in hospitals, is like
Yes.
the impact that good patients can have on hospital workers.
Yes, yes.
So it's huge.
So,
Hey, should we do a little
was
prayer
exciting.
before we leave?
That's really
I don't
neat.
mean to interrupt
Yeah, yeah. Whenever the leader wants to.
Okay, well, I will then. Lord, we know we're here because of you foremost. Even as we think about being a leader, we're in church, as people have said, and we want to be leaders in the church, I think, and whatever we take away in other areas is great. But Lord, we just ask you to be with us, be with John next week when he does his chapter. I'm sure he'll do fine. I just pray that the Holy Spirit kind of pops right through the top of his head and gets some good ideas in there for him to share with us. So Lord, until next week, keep us safe, and it's in Christ's name I pray. Amen.